Hey everybody, welcome to January's edition of the Patreon Q&A here on the Golden Bolt. I'm recording this on January 31st, so there's a chance that it comes out in February, technically, but it's for January. You didn't see anything. The name of the Patreon Q&A is what it says on the tin. For as little as $1 a month over at patreon.com/thegoldenbolt. One of the fun perks you get in addition to joining the Discord server if you'd like, and Discord Hangouts are coming up pretty soon. In fact, whenever this is going up, there will be a post accompanying it that will gauge when people are available for Patreon, Discord Hangouts, and whatnot. And in addition to that, you can ask a Patreon question here for the Q&A, where I'll answer whatever you ask in video, or in this case, audio form with some sort of gameplay or something over top. Maybe some stock footage. I don't know, you'll see. I don't think I have any major things to announce before I get into the Q&A, but there is some general upkeep that I'll do as a sort of content update, I guess. So I plan on having 3 videos out in the month of February. There's a chance that it'll be 2 because I do have a trip planned for about a week in the middle of the month, and I'm not gonna... My goal for 2024 has been 3 videos a month, with the caveat that I won't beat myself up if I only get 2. And as you saw in January, that was the case because a couple review code things kind of fell through. Prince of Persia was one I was hoping to review, and I was told I was getting an early copy by Ubisoft people, and then the way they defined early was after reviews had dropped, even though it was listed as if I would be getting it to review on the same timeline as, like IGN and the major sites. That wasn't the case, so I then turned that down because the thing that sucks about the content review game is that if you are not on that earliest embargo, it's usually going to be a frustrating time for you because the algorithm it's not the algorithm's fault, but the way that people's interests then shift goes to impressions and stream content and that sort of thing that I don't do on the main Golden Bolt channel. I like to be in depth with everything I do broadly, and so that kind of puts me in a weird spot if I want to actually provide a review and not just the way that most people consume reviews, which is they're looking for their opinion on the game they haven't yet purchased but they've paid for via pre-order to be validated. I don't operate that way. I try to give an actual review. And so that's always frustrating with something like that. With Last of Us 2, it was a similar story, but I was on the proper review embargo timeline, just they didn't send me a copy of the game until a month after other outlets, not just like major, IGNs and whatnot. Like, there were YouTube creators that I know that got the game a month before me, and they didn't even cover the game. It ended up happening from some of them, which is kind of interesting. But I got it like 4 days before the embargo was set to go. No, it was like a week, actually. I got it a week before the embargo for that one. I don't know why there was an embargo for that game in the first place, but hey. And so I covered that because of that, just to make up for the Prince of Persia review not being there. I was like, well, Last of Us will probably get some more traction anyway, since it's a mostly PlayStation audience a lot of the time. So that's why I did that one, and then I put out the Most Beaten Games video, and then I was supposed to put out... I was supposed to get Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth at least a week before release, which would have given me ample time to beat it and review it if I crunched, which usually when I play those games I get sucked into them anyway, so not much would have changed. That didn't happen. I didn't get a code until I emailed them and said, it was like day of launch, I was like, hey, should I just assume that you guys went the streamer route again this time and you sent it to streamers instead of reviewers, or you sent it to solely streamers? That was what happened, but they apologized and then sent me a code anyway, so thanks Sega for the code for the game I had already been planning to purchase. But hey, that's cool. So there might be a video here on the second channel just to talk about it broadly. I didn't really record any footage, and I made it clear that I wasn't planning on reviewing it at this point because it was marketed as a 100-hour game, and when you send a copy launch day, guess what? Reviews are already out. It's too late. There's not really a market for that in the algorithmed social media space, sadly. But I then had another video backed up that I was planning to have done around this past weekend, end of the month, that once I had seen the writing on the wall with Yakuza, I went ahead and said, I'm going to work on something else. And then they sent me Yakuza, and the whole thing was I wasn't going to play Infinite Wealth until I had more work done on videos, and then they sent me a copy, so I was like, okay, well, now I guess I might as well play it. just to see if I have anything to say impressions-wise, and those games are my drug. So I'm already mostly done at the time of recording, and it got in the way of finishing up that work. So yeah, either way, I have a cool little PlayStation history video planned for either this coming week or the week after the Ratchet PSP video, because my plan has been, ever since I had to move Ratchet PSP, to move it to the weekend of the Super Bowl, either that Saturday or maybe even on Sunday as like a fun little cute counter-programming thing. I'm not sure that I will do the counter-programming thing, but that's why there were other videos before Ratchet PSP, was between sponsors that wanted, their ads in a certain timestamp in the video, and with Ratchet, I don't put ads on those videos unless they're like really lenient and give me like, oh, you can put it somewhere in the first half, or first 15 minutes or whatever. I don't do like first 5-minute ads or pre-roll ads on Ratchet videos because there's a lot to set up with those ones. So that's why I had to hold that one off a little bit further. But I'm excited for that to be done because I never want to talk about those games again. So look forward to that. That'll be fun. That'll be, like I said, not middle of the month, like the 11th, I think, is the Super Bowl. So in the next 10 days or so, that's going to be out, and I'm excited for that because it's coming together really well. Patrons will have that probably mid next week, unless anything goes wrong. Yeah. Okay, I said I didn't have a lot to say, and then I went 5 minutes, which I guess is par for the course here. But there's my content and life update for now. Speaking of life update, I did have a question from these Patreon questions that was about life in general. And that's from Tony Grizz, who said, I thought you would get to the December video after Christmas, so I'll ask the same question as last month. The question they had asked was, how was your Christmas? My Christmas was good. Hopefully your holiday season was splendid as well, Tony, and everybody here listening and watching. Hopefully you guys had a wonderful time spent with friends or family or loved ones or whoever you find close to you. I enjoyed my time. I mostly relaxed. And then I will jump to, what question do I want to go to next here? I have a few. I'll do 2 back-to-back here. I have one from Tabriz, who asks, if I ever do get around to making a video or videos on the Jak and Daxter games, will I play the PS2 games via Open Goal? For those unfamiliar, the Jak games have been, or at least Jak 1, I don't know about the other 2 or X, Jak 1 at least has been decompiled, and you can run that on PC now because the programming language mainly used for Jak 1 was this language called Goal, which was like a custom Lisp language, and it's really neat because once you learn how to reverse engineer that language, you can just do what somebody did and decompile the entire thing Mario 64 style, and that's really rad. And so you can run it at like HD settings or run it at whatever frame rate you want. I'm not super familiar with the Open Goal project that they did, but I do know that there's a lot of cool freedom stuff that comes from that. The answer is I don't know. Jak's inevitable as far as covering it goes, but I need something unique to do with it. I need a unique reason to cover them other than just what's my opinion on these games, because they're okay. They're good. Jak 1's good. Jak 3 I like. Jak 2's dog shit. But hey, that's my thing. I don't really want to just dunk on some games or have not much to say besides, oh, they're pretty okay. So I need to do them in the history style, most likely, like I did with Ratchet, and that takes a lot of setup to do. So I haven't figured out how I would do those yet. My assumption was that I would do the PS3 collection because outside of a couple bugs, that's relatively faithful, and the PS4 games are buggy as all hell. The PS4 ports, rather. And the PS2 games are fine, but I'm never playing on a PS2 physically again, most likely, so... Yeah, and then a similar question from Chris, not Mykonos fan Chris, another Chris. He had asked, have you ever played the Ratchet & Clank HD collection in 3D? And if not, would you be interested in playing those games in 3D? The only downside is that the 3D mode in the games is locked at 30 FPS. I have not. I don't have a 3D compatible television, and I don't think I ever intend to have one. Nothing against the concept. I always thought it was a cool gimmick, but... yeah, no, I'm good. Not really a fun answer to that question, but hey, I then have one, this isn't really a question from AE Double, but broadly AE Double suggested that, if I'm ever looking for other stuff to cover, and I always am, in fact, the $15 tier has a proper suggest videos for me to do, or suggest topics for me to cover, / vote from this list of things that I've put together on which ones you want to see next. That's something I really want to get back to doing more fully once I have got a couple shorter videos, in the bank, so to speak, as far as like for public consumption goes, because then I can kind of give patrons a lot more early access to stuff and have you guys vote on which ones you want to see uploaded first or finished first once I have a few different balls juggled in the air all at once. But AEW suggested Castlevania as one of those, and Castlevania, funnily, was one that I happened to be looking at before I even saw this comment. I wouldn't, again, probably cover them as far as like, here's the gameplay of Castlevania, and here's my critiques of it or anything, because there's a lot you can say very clearly, but, a lot of what I do now is the history breakdown of stuff, and I really like to see how stuff came to be and how it developed over time, versus doing a broad, I like this thing about the gameplay, but man, isn't it weird that this exists? And so I kind of mapped out like a history of Castlevania video series, because that'd be a very long video, and like where I would like do the chapter breaks to break up the videos. And I have it written down on my little notepad over here in case I want to get to it. I know there are other creators that have done very big history of Castlevania projects, so there's a question of whether there's a need for mine to exist if I did one, and that's the main thing that would hold that for now. Besides it being a lot of work, because you'd probably have to put together, I think I had 5 chapters, maybe 6. So you're looking at potentially 6+ hours of video content that you ostensibly should have done before you upload the first part. And while I intend this year to have those sorts of projects where they're multi-parters, not in the terms of like Castlevania Part 1, but like here's a game and here's the sequel game is more what I'm talking about. My plan is to have a couple of those this year where I don't even talk about one of them until they're both done, and then that way I can drop one, I can release one the following week, because there's one specific series I have in mind for that, and another one that I'm working on now that I might also do that way, even though that one would be a lot more work because it's an RPG, but yeah, so it'd be a lot of work to have done very far ahead of time, and usually I don't have as much luxury to have videos of that scale in the pipeline simultaneously yet. I haven't gotten that good at my job yet. So I'd like to, because I like Castlevania a lot. From whenever I play them, I enjoy them. So that's that suggestion / question. Thank you for that, though. I do want to mention it, because if there's interest, I'll probably do it. So yeah, let me know. I then have I have 2 more questions here. I did this very out of order, so I'm looking through my list of questions now. These are both kind of actually in the same vein, so this worked out really well. One is from The Crazy Even, who asks, what's a game or topic that's an absolute hard pass for you to cover? Never ever going to talk about it, not even on a rainy day. I couldn't think of one. I know that when even asked this question in the Discord, Chris Mykonos fan said that I had a Batman rule that I don't remember. I know that broadly I've never had much to say about the Batman games. Like, they're kind of just there, and they're not really for me, which is funny because I like the Spider-Man games a lot. But those are also part of the Insomniac juice that I just really enjoy. I just like the way that their games kind of work, and I don't know, something about Batman never clicked for me, so I enjoyed what I've played of them, but I don't remember having a rule that I would never cover them, because if that was the case, I don't think I would have bought a signed copy of the Arkham Dual Pack on PS3, signed by Nolan North. I don't know why I bought that, actually, in general, but it's kind of cool that I have that. So as far as the question goes, going back to that, absolute hard pass for me to cover, probably just like generic bad game, like a Bubsy. I don't know. I don't think there's really a reason to cover Bubsy. It's already been done to death. In the same vein, like, I've had people ask me to do Sonic 06 after doing the Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 and the Sonic Team up through 2005 video. I don't think there's much reason for me to do that. There has been like a relatively compelling argument that I could see being made, and I've talked about this before with Chris Mykonos fan once or twice, of like, you know, with how much was forgotten about the Sonic team history that we unearthed again for that video, I could see something similar being valuable for 06, because so much has gotten muddied by this game's a bunch of poopy dog shit sort of stuff, and I mean, it is, but there's a chance that there's a good story to tell there. It's also kind of just a bummer story, and I'd rather tell other bummer stories instead, like the THQ one, because that's kind of one that people don't talk about much, and Sonic's done to death. So yeah, maybe stuff like that, just broadly bad games that don't really have much for me to chew on. Yeah. And then the final question comes from Thomas Kuzma, who asks what my point of view is on the YouTube landscape as we enter 2024. And that's in regards to retirements and controversies and all that sort of stuff. I don't know that I have a significant viewpoint on it. It's not going to go anywhere. You know, we see more and more that Twitch is kind of struggling to maintain its status quo simply because Amazon, it seems. So when there's something like that, or, you know, Kick being controversial, YouTube's probably got a leg up in the streaming space. Short form content is obviously going to be here to stay. That wasn't a surprise to anybody with a brain. And I have a couple of YouTube shorts that I do want to start making and putting out. It's just, I always feel that time could be better spent making better things than shorts. And I just need to sit down and just crank out a bunch of them one day all at once, because they only take maybe, you know, an hour to make in total. And, you know, they're good outreach for non-subscribers. So I have ideas for them. I just have to make a bunch of them and start scheduling them to force myself onto that schedule, on top of the usual, you know, work schedule and workflow that I have. But it's a good question, because we're starting to see a lot of the old guard of YouTube not go away, but they're finishing up their own exit strategies. And I've spoken many a time before about how when I started my channel back in 2016, I spent several months before that planning things out and giving myself like a 6-month like build up to the first video, and then immediately throwing out everything I thought I was going to do, because once you make one video, you're like, oh, it's nothing like what I thought it was going to be. And so that all changed. But I had a 5-year plan for the first 5 years. I had a 5-year plan for this second set of 5 years, which we're in season 9 now, which is wild. Technically, you know, only 8 years in, because 2016 to 2024. But, you know how seasons work, obviously. But, you know, I think we're currently seeing a lot of people either willingly or not execute their exit strategies of, okay, I've been doing this for so long, I'm now the old guard, I want to have a family and not worry about an algorithm forever and ever. So you see people pseudo-retiring or outright retiring, and that was always expected, and there was always that like weird concern of older channels are being algorithmically suppressed, when really the truth of the matter is it's not really that, as much as your audience gets older too, and when your audience gets older, they have kids, and it's harder for them to watch videos. And that's a thing you always have to be cognizant of. No one's truly retired a YouTuber yet after a 40-year career, because it's only been around for 20. So it's a really complex question, and I don't know that there's a lot to say in a short form video like this. But broadly, I think it's in a very healthy spot. You know, this was the first January where I didn't see any ad revenue dip as far as the actual ad rates go. You know, it did dip because of you know, videos not performing as well and old legacy content being a little slower in January. But usually in January from December, you would see like a 40% drop in ad revenue, because brands aren't spending as much money when people aren't spending money. And that wasn't the case this year, which is kind of cool to see, actually, because it means you can kind of... This is one of those jobs where if you do it as a job, you have to be planning several months out, because you have to plan on the first 2 or 3 months of the year, your revenue may be being down by 40%. So you have to plan on having a big December. And I didn't do that. I was supposed to have a big December, and then that didn't happen. And thankfully it hasn't hurt so much yet in January, because, you need to have more of a safety net and more savings doing this than you do a traditional job where you're guaranteed a flat paycheck every month or every week or every 2 weeks, whatever your pay schedule might be, rather. But I don't think I have too much more to add, actually. I think it's in a very healthy spot. I think that the old guard that are retiring, for lack of a better term, is a thing to be happy about, not in the sense of, oh, there's more space for us, but in the sense of it means that people can successfully finish off a career doing this sort of stuff and then pass the torch to somebody from the new guard. That's a thing that inevitably everyone has to do, unless you have one of the top 1% of channels or podcasts where you can keep people entertained forever. And I do think we're also entering an era where you see folks, of my generation that have grown up with this sort of content. They stick around with that content as if they would regular TV shows, in prior generations. So it's the sort of thing where people that were in their, that are in their mid to late 30s that are doing YouTube now, the Matt Pats of the world, their contemporaries in life don't have that same worldview on consuming content as, even 7, 8 years younger folks like myself have. And so it'll be interesting as time goes on, because there's a chance for people of like that mid-20s age group to like under 30, I would say, to have longer careers in content creation, because people understand it more from that generation, and they're more likely to stay tuned in to those channels over time, as long as they don't do dumb shit. But hey, you don't get into YouTube unless you're kind of an idiot, so expect most YouTubers to do dumb shit at some point. Hopefully this doesn't age poorly. I like to think I have a pretty okay head on my shoulders. I had real job aspirations and stuff before I did the YouTube thing, and I just kind of did it because it was fun. So hopefully I can be slightly different than everyone else that screws up, and I can eventually retire from this normally one day, very far down the road. Anyway, I'm going very off the rails here, so I'm going to call it there. If you want to ask me a question in general, feel free to ask me in the comments. I'll usually answer them in text form. If you want to ask a question as part of one of these Q&As, you can do so via patreon.com/thegoldenbolt for as little as $1 a month. I might do a free Q&A for like the free Patreon members over there, because that's kind of a thing too, one of these days. So, if you don't have the means to or don't want to support via Patreon, you can always just follow on that platform as well. And if you want to hear me do this sort of rambling most every week, check out my podcast Crub, again, youtube.com/@CrubOfficial, or the audio podcast at crub.org. You can find every audio platform you desire, and then some, talking about Amazon podcasts. Don't know why that still exists, but it does. As always, until next time, stay golden.